Okay, we are back again. Flip geometry. We are going to get into lesson 3-3, which is slopes of lines. You guys have seen this before. We just want to review it once again because we are going to use it again in geometry. After this lesson, you'll be able to find the slopes of lines. You will also be able to use slope to identify parallel and perpendicular lines. Now, that's the only part of it that's going to be new to you. You guys have already been taught in algebra how to find the slopes of lines, but now we're going to apply it to parallel and perpendicular lines. So in a coordinate plane, the slope of a line is the ratio of the change along the y-axis to the change along the x-axis between any 2 points on the line. Again, you guys have seen this before. It's the change of rise over run. And when we write the formula for slope, I'm going to write it over here. It's just m equals y, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We've got our x coordinate, our first coordinate here, our second coordinate there. When we plug it into the formula, we find our slope. Now, when we're talking about classifying slopes, there are four different ways this can be done. If we're moving from left to right on the coordinate graph and the line is going up, then it is a positive slope. If we're moving from left to right and it's going down, then it's a negative slope. A zero slope is just a horizontal line, and a line that is vertical will have an undefined slope. Now we're going to take a look at each one of these now. Let's go ahead and find the slope of this line, ST. So we're going to go ahead and write our points first, and S is going to be -3, 7, and T is going to be -1, -1. Again, the first thing we want to do is going to be label our points. Okay, I'm going to label this guy x1, y1, x2, and y2. And the reason we do this, it just makes it easier for us when we go to plug it into the slope formula. So m is going to equal our y2 is going to be -1 minus y1, which is 7, over -1, which is our x2, minus a -3. -1 minus 7 is going to be -8. -1 minus a -3, which is going to be -1 plus 3, is going to be 2. -8 divided by 2, our slope is going to be -4. And again, we see that our slope is a negative slope. Now we've got line PQ with point P, which is going to be 0, 4, and Q, which is 0, -3. Again, we're going to label our points x1, y1, x2, y2. We plug it into our formula. We're going to have -3, which is our y2, minus 4 over 0 minus 0, x2 minus x1, which equals -7 over 0. But because we have 0 in the denominator, this is going to be an undefined slope. Now we move on to line GF, with G going to be -2, -5, and F, the coordinate for F is going to be 6, 2. Again, don't ever get lazy and not label your points. x1, y1, x2, y2. Let's plug it into our slope formula. So y2 minus y1 is going to be 2 minus -5 over 6 minus -2. 2 minus -5, which is going to be 2 plus 5, is 7. 6 minus -2, which is going to be 6 plus 2, is 8. And there is our slope, 7 over 8. And as you can see, it's going to be a positive slope. The last line we're going to take a look at is line XY. And the coordinate for point X is going to be -2, -1. The coordinate for point Y is going to be 6, -1. Label my points. We are ready to use our formula. Y2 minus Y1 is going to be -1 minus a -1. Put those in parentheses. And then 6 minus a -2. -1 minus a -1, which is going to be -1 plus 1, will end up being 0. 6 minus a -2, which is 6 plus 2, is 8. And our slope is going to be 0. If you notice, it's a horizontal line. It's going to have a slope of 0. All horizontal lines will have a slope of 0. Now, we're looking at slopes of parallel lines. Two non-vertical lines have the same slope if and only if they are parallel. We want to look at line L and line M. Both of these, if you notice, have a slope of 4. They are parallel, and they will also have the same slope. Remember, we write that down as line L is parallel to line M, and parallel lines will always have the same slope. Now, perpendicular lines are a little different. When you look at the slopes of perpendicular lines, two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if and only if the product of the slopes is -1. What that means is this. Now let's look at line P. Line P has a slope of -1/4. Line M has a slope of 4. So we need to multiply 4 times -1/4, the slope of line M and the slope of line P. And when we multiply those two things together, their product is -1. Another way to talk about the slopes of perpendicular lines is to talk about something called the negative reciprocal, which means is, if you look up here, we've got slope is 4. The negative reciprocal is going to be the opposite of this, whatever sign this has a positive sign, so it'll be a negative number. And then the reciprocal is going to be just basically flipping the number over. So if you look at this, remember 4 is equal to 4/1. If we flip that over, it'll be 1/4. And if you notice, the negative reciprocal of that perpendicular line is -1/4. For our last problem, we want to determine whether line AB and CD are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. And then they give you all of the coordinates for the points for A, B, C, and D. So we're going to look at line AB first. Let's go ahead and find the slope of that guy. AB, we're going to, our point for A, I'm just going to rewrite these just to make it easier. -2, -1. And B, 4, 5. I'll label these guys X1, Y1, X2, Y2. And we want to find this slope. That's going to be 5. Y2 is 5 minus a -1, which is Y1, over 4 minus a -2. 5 plus 1, 6. 4 plus 2, 6. 6 over 6 is going to be equal to 1. Now, if we continue and look at CD, I'm just going to write it here. C is going to be 6, 1. D, 9, -2. Again, let's label our points. X1, y1, x2, y2, and let's find the slope. I'm actually going to do it under here. -2 minus -1 over 9 minus 6. We've got -2 minus 1 is -3. 9 minus 6 is 3, which is going to be -1. Now, if we take a look at these, are they equal to each other? No. So we know they cannot be parallel. And to find out if they're perpendicular to each other, we just multiply them together to see if it equals -1. So 1 times -1 equals -1. So yes, the answer to the question is AB and CD parallel, perpendicular, or neither, the answer would be perpendicular because of the fact that when you multiply their products, the answer is -1. That's it. 3-3. We talked about slopes. That should have been just a review for you, but then we took that and applied it to parallel lines and perpendicular lines. Remember, the slopes of parallel lines are going to be equal to each other, and the slopes of perpendicular lines, their products, their product is going to be -1. That's the only things you guys had to remember for lesson 3-3. We will go over this very briefly and then do some work when we get to class.